Thank you very much, Agatha. The Vice Chancellor, my esteemed board member, whose introduction I totally agree with, full of zen. In fact, anytime we're going to have board meetings and she says, I may not be able to be there, I just say, let's postpone it, please. Distinguished guests, partners, sponsors, members of the Fourth Estate, BCA amazing world-class coaches, ladies and gentlemen. It wouldn't be hard for me to experience some level of imposter syndrome standing here. After all, who am I? Just a kid from one of the tiniest countries in Sierra Leone, in Africa. As we sometimes say, a pimple on the African elephant's backside. What am I doing here in one of Africa's largest countries' best tertiary institutions? Come on, that deserves a round of applause. So please forgive me if I'm a little starstruck just being here. It takes me to, I've been asked to speak a bit about, why this? Why do we do this? What got into you, Modupe? Well, I have to take you back to 1995. On a rainy day in November, somewhere in the hinterlands of Sierra Leone, as a young army lieutenant in the midst of a civil war, I had to bury 5 young soldiers. These 5 young soldiers had been shot and killed. Sadly, not by the enemy, but by some of their fellow soldiers. Because the captain under whom they served had, due to a mixture of consumption of illegal drugs and alcohol, led his unit outside of the area where they should have been, a couple of miles outside, and they ran into another unit on a rainy night, mistook them for enemy, gunfire ensued, and by the time I realized from the radio communication from both units that the enemy was sister units and called off the fire, 5 young men between the ages of 18 and 23 were dead. As I buried, those young men, I found myself asking the question, what was their crime? What was their crime? These were soldiers serving their country, volunteered to come in and serve, and now they were dead. And the only crime that I could think of was that they served under a leader who made poor decisions. On that day, I discovered something about leadership. And that is this: when leaders make poor decisions, people die. When leaders make poor decisions, people die. And I know that may sound a little dramatic because we're not in wartime, but I assure you, ladies and gentlemen, even today, when they make poor decisions, people lose their livelihoods, and that's just stage 1 to death. So I became quite passionate about what makes leaders make poor decisions. Because the last time I checked, not too many people I know wake up every morning saying, gee, let me see how I can cause the death of my constituents, or the death of my students and lecturers, or the loss of livelihood of my employees, or worse yet, the death of my children. That journey took me through a number of iterations, including pursuing a PhD in leadership. And eventually I came to realize that when leaders are malnourished intellectually, they make poor decisions. When they are intellectually malnourished, in other words, they are not aware of what they are not aware of. And the worst part about this intellectual disease is that unlike any other disease, stomachache, foot-ache, tooth pain, even cancer, where any other disease, you who have it are the first to know. When it comes to this particular pernicious disease that is affecting Africa, you who have it are the last to know. And that's when the light bulb came on to say, that's why we are where we are in Africa. Because we have whole droves of malnourished leaders walking around wearing fancy suits, things like mine, driving in wonderful-looking cars, maybe even having fancy titles, and making poor decisions. So I decided that since the good Lord spared my life by allowing two 7.62 millimeter bullets that perforated my skin to avoid vital organs, so that I could still stand here today and give a testimony, that I would dedicate my life to making leaders make much, much fewer poor decisions. And that's what MLC is all about. At MLC, it's 2 days of action learning. It's 2 days of experiential learning. It's 2 days of focused networking. It's 2 days of purposeful gathering, not so that you can say, I belong to the leadership class. Or not so that you can say, ooh, look at how many people's business cards I have. But so that you can leave there with the solution to at least one of the problems that you have that is keeping your organization, your company, your university, your community from achieving the very vision of success that you want it to achieve. That's what MLC is about. So, if I seem like an evangelist, I assure you I have reason to be. Because the reason why I am still alive today is because somebody up there decided to spare it. And the way I pay it forward is to make sure that now, in my 50s, by the time I am 70, the Africa that will exist will look vastly different from the Africa that we knew when we were children. It is going to be a prosperous continent. It is going to be a high-income continent. It is going to be the kind of place where our grandchildren will laugh and say that, oh, Grandpa, you know how to tell stories, when we tell them that people used to go to school without shoes. And why is that? Because more leaders will be well-fed intellectually, making smarter, wiser choices, and achieving outcomes that look like this university today. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, what we are seeing here is the product of a leader's decisions. I grew up in Kenya in the 1980s, and there wasn't this, so maybe I wouldn't have had to go to university elsewhere. But somebody made wise decisions. That's why we are enjoying this today. And what we're going to do at MLC is share those secrets. We're going to share how it happened, share the recipe, so that other leaders will be inspired to do similar. And when we do that at scale, we will create a movement that will shake this earth, because Africa will have risen. Thank you.